Yeah, afternoon. So, what was the last thing that we did in the previous class? Please tell me what was the last thing we did in the previous class? Last topic of the previous class. No response. Why so? Are you able to hear me? Good afternoon.
So actually that
Yes, what?
I'm checking sir 1 minute.
You are checking 1 minute. I think we have to start from this chapter only, okay? We need to
Sir,
start.
you have finished the democracy now next chapter.
Okay. All right. So let us start with this chapter. So this chapter is basically uh, chapter 1, constitution, why and how. Okay. So it is like, why do we need constitution? What is the need for a constitution? All right. So there are several reasons why we require constitution. So the constitution, what is the constitution? Okay, so basically, first of all, just understand this thing. Like, there is one state, okay, where we live. State is India, okay. Now, India is a state because it has four things: people, sovereignty, territory, and government. All right. That's why it's a state. It's a country, what we see in geographical terms. So, those set of rules or laws, codified laws, or even uncodified laws, not even written at one place, those laws which are the highest law of the land, those basic rules according to which the country is governed, the state is governed. So the set of those basic rules which stands to be the highest law of the land, that is basically called as constitution. So the constitution is the supreme law book. It is the supreme law of the land. Are you getting the point? So what is a constitution? So the constitution is a set of basic rules and principles that guides how the society must be governed, in what manner the society will be governed. So those set of rules are basically written in the constitution, or I would say in the form of a constitution. All right. So what is the need for a constitution? Why a constitution in a country is basically required? So because there are diverse set of people living in a country, there are many people, diversity is there in the country, and differences often basically happens because there is diversity, there are differences between the people, and sometimes what happens, those differences leads to what it leads, it basically leads to conflicts. Okay, those differences sometimes what it do, it lands the people in conflicting situations. The people comes in conflict. All right. So that is the main reason why the constitution is required. So in that case, what is required is basically those differences must be avoided, and people must be given a situation, a place where they can live peacefully, they can build trust with each other. So the trust will be built, or trust will develop the time when they will be assured that there are certain rules in the country that is followed by everyone. So for that thing, the constitution is required, so as the differences can be settled peacefully, can be settled amicably, okay, through peaceful means. And those peaceful means are basically written in the constitution only. Getting the point? So now coming on to the next point, that is constitution allows coordination and assurance. So what the constitution do is, the society need these basic rules to be accepted by everyone. Okay. So what they can do, what the people can do, what they cannot do, what rights they have, and what basically others can claim. Okay. So to basically these what I say, the constitution is basically the set of document that enshrine all these things. All right. So the importance of rules is that without these rules, the people will start feeling insecure. The people will be very much insecure, and they will lead, this insecurity will basically lead to conflicting situations in the country. So the rules must be publicly known, they must be acceptable by all, and these rules must be legally enforceable. Okay. What is the role of enforcement? So basically what happen is, when you make a rule, when you pass a law, but without the proper mechanism on how that law will be enforced, that law doesn't stand to be relevant for the country. Because the more important thing is not making of the law, but more important thing is basically the enforcement of that law. All right. So enforcement gives assurance that everyone will follow the rule, and if someone breaks the rule, they will be punished, ensuring fairness. Okay. So what is the main function of the constitution? So the main function of the constitution is, the first and most important function of a constitution is to provide basic rules that ensures minimum coordination and peaceful existence. What happens, the proper for let's say, for example, what is there in Indian constitution, because Indian constitution always recognizes diversity. It recognizes that diversity at multiple levels are there. All right. So because of that diversity, what happens is that because of such diversity, the people sometimes develops a feeling of insecurity with each other. So what the constitution has done is, it has created parliament at central level. Parliament, for the elections of parliament, entire country will be divided into electoral constituencies, and from every constituency, every small diversity will be represented in the parliament. That has what it has done, it has basically ensured that everyone gets representation, and by that representation, the conflicts between the people is basically reduced, and it is the fundamental principle that avoids any kind of conflict and allows a peaceful coexistence of the people. Mutual trust of the people is developed by that. All right. So what is the meaning of constitution? So constitution is a set of fundamental principle. It is that fundamental book that governs the country. It is that fundamental set of principles. Yes.
Sir, why the constitution is termed as a living document?
That we will be discussing later. That we will be discussing later. Abhi, just understand what a constitution is. Okay. That's a very different topic. All right. So coming on to this, constitution is basically a set of fundamental principles. So what is constitution? Constitution is the supreme law of the land that basically enshrines all the, I would say, fundamental principles according to which a state has to be governed, a country has to be governed. All right. So that fundamental document is the constitution. All right. So why the decision making power matters, why it matters that the decisions must be taken basically. So people have different opinion, and basically some people treat something as a more preferential thing, and other treat some other thing as a more preferential thing. So because people have different opinions, people have different preferences, so that's why dispute arises. Okay, and dispute arises on which rule should govern the society. Okay, so before deciding law, it is necessary to decide who has the authority to make the law. It must be decided that who will make the law. Will a person make a law, or basically the few people will make law, or basically the representatives of the people will make law, or basically who will make the law? So that is basically decided. All right, so what is the role of the constitution? So here the constitution plays a very important role in highlighting the task of the people, in answering the question that who gets to decide what, that who will rule. It specifies the basic allocation of power in the society. It specifies how the power will be allocated in the society. It determines, the constitution determines who has the authority to make the laws and the policies. In simple term, the constitution creates what? It creates institutions. What it does, it creates institutions. All right, so there are different ways of decision making. So one way is monarchical, other system is one party system, and other is democracy. All right, so how decisions are made in democracy, you know this very well. Now talking about the Indian constitution, so Indian constitution is a classic example that has created a parliament for making these laws. The question was this only, na, in a democratic state, who will make the law? This was the question. So constitution answers this question in such a way that it answers that the parliament that is created by the constitution will make the laws. All right, so the constitution defines the powers of the parliament, how parliament is organized. The constitution creates and authorizes the government. Now what is the second feature of constitution? So the second feature, so first feature we have already understood, like who will make the laws, who will take decisions, who will have the authority to take all the decisions and to make laws. All right, so now talking about the second function of the constitution. So second function of constitution is that it specifies, what it does, it specifies who has the power to make decisions. All right, who make law? Now that's okay, that's now parliament is created by the constitution to make law. Now the thing is, who has the power to make decisions? Now who will make the decisions to decide how the government is formed and function? Now who will take the decision to decide that how the government will be formed and function? Okay, now this task is also done by the constitution. There is one another task that is basically done by the constitution, that there are need of some sort of limitations. Okay, merely deciding who make law is not enough. It is also required that the government, so what can happen is, law, like you are deciding that parliament will make law, that is already done by the constitution. Now very well, you decides that the parliament will make law, but now it is very much required that there must always be some sort of limitations on the power of the parliament also. The parliament's power must also be limited or restricted in a way that the parliament must also exercise some limitations in the exercise of its power. It cannot arbitrarily make any law. It cannot discriminate people on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or basically it cannot ban any sort of religion. Okay, any type of religion. So that is the first important function, is that to decide who will make the law is done by the constitution. In a way it has created parliament. But now another thing that it do is, it basically, there are requirements of limitations. limitations has to be put on the powers of parliament. So that work is also done by the constitution by putting certain limitations on the power of the lawmaking institutions in the form of reasonable restrictions. All right. So another function of the constitution is to basically put some restriction. Now, what is the role of the constitution here? So the constitution prevents the government from becoming authoritarian or unjust. So the constitution sets those fundamental limits on the powers of the government. Okay, it basically sets some fundamental limits that must be exercised by the government in basically giving in working. Okay, so now the first feature was that who will make the law is decided by the constitution. Now what will be the limitations on the powers of the government, that is also decided by the constitution. All right, I'm just coming in a second. So third function of the constitution. So what will be the third function of the constitution? So the third function of the constitution is basically to limit the powers of the government and basically to ensure that these limits are fundamental and cannot be crossed. All right. So how are these basically limits imposed? These limits, so fundamental right, we normally understand that fundamental right gives us rights, but that's not true. Fundamental rights हमें rights नहीं देते हैं. Fundamental rights doesn't gives us rights. It in fact restricts the rights. Okay, ये एक मानना है कि we get right by chapter third or part third of the Indian Constitution. नहीं, it restricts our rights in a way that it limits actually the power of the government. What does those fundamental rights says? What is the wording of the fundamental right? In the starting of it, in the Bare Act, you can see that every fundamental right starts with the phrase that the state shall not. What it says? The state shall not. That means the fundamental rights are in turn actually restricting the power of the state. Instead of providing rights to the people, they are restricting the power of the state. All right. So the most common ways to limit the governmental power is through fundamental rights, and these rights basically belong to all the citizens and they cannot be violated by the government. Okay, so the basic rights protected are like protection from arbitrary arrest, freedom of speech, freedom of religion and conscience, freedom of association, freedom to carry on trade and business. All right, so these are those necessary rights. Now some emergency provision is also there. Okay, now during any kind of national emergency, some rights may be restricted. The constitution clearly specifies when and how these rights can be restricted. It is not like at any point of time the rights can be restricted. No, it is not like this. It is that these rights can be restricted only under specific circumstances. Okay, so that is what is written in the constitution. Now the next thing is that the constitution, what it does, it basically not just allocate the power, it enshrines the aspiration of the people also. Okay, so let's say the enabling role of the constitution. So the constitution is not just, because we can see in the preamble also, in the preamble what is given, in the preamble it is mentioned that the basically in the preamble, liberty, justice, fraternity, equality, such phrases are mentioned. So what does such phrases signifies? So those phrases are basically the expression of what? Those are expression of the aspirations of the people. Those phrases are actually the expression of the people's needs. Okay, those are the expression of what the people aspires for. Getting the point? So that is the real expression of the needs of the people. Okay, so the constitution also expresses the aspiration of the people, what we basically as a society wants to achieve, which is written in the preamble, fundamental rights and DPSP. This was the third function. Now coming on to the fourth function of the constitution. So fourth function is to enable the government to fulfill the aspirations of the society. I just told you that people of the country have certain aspirations. There are multiple aspirations in the minds of the people, and basically the constitution expresses those aspirations. The constitution writes those aspirations of the people of the country, and basically enables the government of the country to achieve the aspirations of the people of the country. Getting the point? So the constitution has this enabling role. It enables the government to basically express the aspirations of the people. All right, so that's a very important role of the constitution. Now talking about the enabling provision. So for example, in South Africa, the protection was given against discrimination, conservation of nature, accessible housing, and these things were there. In Indonesia also such things were there. So this is the enabling role of the constitution. Now next is basically what the constitution does is, so the people of the country has some sort of fundamental identity. We as the people of this country has a fundamental identity. So that is called as the fundamental identity of the people of this country. So the constitution basically expresses this fundamental identity of the people of this country. Are you getting the point? So what the constitution does is, the constitution expresses the identity of the people. Okay, so in the constitution, the collective identity of the people is expressed. The collective political identity of the people, okay, like defines how the people will be governed, decides who is governed. Okay, so these are the enabling things. All right. Now shared values across constitution. So whatsoever constitution you will see, you will find some sort of shared aspirations there. All right, constitution and national identity, these things are already told, like already been taught in the previous classes, that what type of identity do we share. Now coming on to isme itna hi hai now. Key question about the constitution. So these are the key question, that what is the constitution, how effective a constitution is. Okay, so ultimately we came to a definition that the meaning of constitution in most countries is that constitution is a single written document that defines the organs of the state, that delimits the powers of the organs of the state, and basically put reasonable restrictions on the power of the different organs of the state. All right, now there is a common misconception in the minds of people. Okay, so what do you think, what you say, is it mandatory? Now I'm asking question to all of you, that is it mandatory that every country must have a constitution? Tell me, is it mandatory that every country must have a
Sir,
constitution?
for smooth functioning, a set of rules is required. That is provided by the Constitution, but if not, so it is okay.
Just give me a simple answer. It is very much required. Is it? Can any country run without constitution?
Yes, sir, it can run, but for smooth functioning, it is required.
Oh, I'm not asking that. I'm just, you said yes, it can run. है ना? Others also please tell.
sir, a country can run without a
Your voice is
constitution.
very low. Sorry?
Some
Yes, the
countries
constitution
can
can run without.
A country can run without constitution.
yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
Subshri, why are you all saying this here? You disappointed me. That's not right. That's not right. No country can run without constitution. No, that's not possible. I told you na, constitution is basically a set of document, or it might be set of basic rules. If it is written at a one place, then it is written constitution. But if it is not written at one place, still the every country to run must be having some sort of basic rules which tells that how the government will be constituted. Even if there is monarchy, those basic rules which are not written anywhere are followed there, like who will be the next ruler. So there are certain basic rules. Those basic rules that forms the government, those basic rules that limits the powers of the government, those basic rules which provides for the uh, collective aspiration of the people. Okay, so those basic rules are very much required, without which a country cannot be governed. So there are two types of constitutions. Where it is written in form of a single document or a book, there it is called as a written constitution. But where it is not written in a single document, it is called as unwritten constitution. Getting the point? So there, what is it called? It is called as unwritten constitution. All right. Any doubt?
Got it, sir.
So unwritten constitution. So there, where there is not no single document for writing the rules, so there what happens, several laws, several customs, several judicial decisions are there which are already taken. So those decisions or basically rules and conducts becomes the backbone of that country. Okay, so by the virtue of which the country is basically ruled. Okay, so it is not just a single document. Okay, it is a, so in India also the constitution is not just that document. Even apart from that document, there are several conventions, there are several basically customs, traditions that are regularly being followed and enforced also. So those also forms the backbone of the constitution of this country. Okay, so let's take a broader view of the constitution, and the broader view of the constitution says that it is not limited to just single document or rule. Okay, it is somewhat broader than that. Okay, it is somewhat broader. All right, getting the point? Clear? Now its effectiveness of the constitution law, like how basically it is um it comes in place. Okay, now mode of promulgation of constitution, just give me a second. So let us understand the mode of promulgation of the constitution. So the how the constitution is basically promulgated. So mode of promulgation refers to how a constitution is created and adopted. All right. So it talks about like how it is basically adopted and comes to the force. Okay. So what happens is, so it focuses on who frames the constitution and how much authority and public support they had. So popular support is very much required. See, no single constitution can be formed which lacks popular support. Why? Because when the people will be supporting certain uh, when the people will be supporting particular rules, okay, when the people will be supporting the constituent assembly, normal, then only the constituent assembly will be able to function and to basically make the constitution. All right, so popular support is very much important. Without the popular support, without the support of the people, successful constitutions cannot be formed, as we can see in case of South Africa, United States of America and India. All right. Indian constitution was drafted by Constituent Assembly between the time of 1946 to 1949. Okay. So the Constitution of India was based on a very long history of the Indian nationalist struggle. Okay. So why? Like for example, like just giving you in case that there were 299 members earlier, there were 389 members in the Constituent Assembly. Afterward, partition after partition, so it went on to 299. All right, so those people framed the constitution, which even after like around 7.5 decades, still basically we are following that constitution. So why we are accepting the constitution that is framed by those just 299 people, okay, of our country, who basically framed the constitution? Why are we still accepting that constitution? Okay, the reason is that the constitution gained legitimacy because the framers who framed the constitution of India had a mass support. They had a very large support, all right, and even they had public credibility. Okay, those people who were part of the Constituent Assembly that formed that basically made the constitution, they represented diverse section of the society, and they did not use the constitution for their personal power. Instead, they made this constitution for running the entire country. Even I have already told you that it was not that the people, the framers of the constitution, had to basically develop a choice on how the constitution will look like. No, they never did that, because there was, during the time of the nationalist freedom struggle, already a consensus was developed. Based on that consensus, the constitution was then formed. All right, so there was already a pre-existing consensus which was developed during the time of our nationalist freedom struggle. So based on that consensus only, the constitution is formed. Okay, so now, like, this national consensus was there. Even in some countries, referendum was conducted by before making the constitution, but in our country it was already very much like decided only. Okay, like how the country will look like. Now there are some sort of substantive provisions, okay, in the constitution. See, it is not like the constitution has to just be read in basically letters only. It is not at all required that we need to basically read the constitution line by line. It is that the constitution has to be understood. The word in the constitution do not have their literal meanings. Okay, those words mentioned in the Constitution of India, so those words basically had some sort of, I would say, intrinsic meaning. Okay, so and that meaning is basically called as the substantive provision of the Constitution. The Constitution has substance also, not just the rules, not just the law, but also had substance. All right. So even there is a need for justice and inclusiveness. Okay, so these are very easy topics, nothing important, already discussed in the classes. Okay, so are you finding anything difficult here? Are you finding? Now moving on to flexibility and rigidity.
No, sir.
These are very and even already dealt with topics. Okay, already done topics. So now moving on to this provision, that the constitution is referred to as flexible constitution and rigid constitution. And here your doubt comes, Ashutosh, that why the constitution is called as a living document. The constitution is said to be a living document because the constitution is not just read in its words, it can be multiply interpreted in different forms. The constitution has several interpretations based on which every word can be interpreted by the judiciary, based on which the country is governed. All right. So there are certain provisions in the constitution which is basically the core value of the constitution that ensures the stability in the country, which cannot be amended easily. Rather, there are certain provisions in the constitution that are basically related to the adaptability of the constitution, which are very flexible and can be amended in the meantime. Okay, so and even easily also. All right, so those provisions which are flexible can be amended easily, but those provisions which are basically the stricter provisions cannot be amended easily, requires stability. All right, so that's why the constitution is called as a living document. Okay, so the constitution allows amendments, but it is not like we can amend the constitution whenever we want. Okay, so there is a balance. Okay, and that balance basically ensures that the constitution is interpreted according to the needs of the society, according to the emerging needs of the society, and it is basically that the misuse of power is prevented. All right, so that whichsoever government will come, they will not be easily able to amend the constitution. It is that they will basically think before amending the constitution, because it is not at all easy to amend the core values of the constitution. All right, so we just saw this. Now coming on to the next point, that is authority of a constitution. So these are some key questions that we need to see. So what was the credibility of the framer? What was the intelligent organization of power? Does it give everyone a reason to accept? Even does it reflect people's hope and aspiration? And is it just and fair? So this is will be basically the question in the meantime to come, that you will have to ask and respond to you. Okay, now how was the Indian constitution made? Now I already told you it was made by a constituent assembly. Okay, it was framed by constituent assembly. The first sitting of the constituent assembly was on 9 December 1946. It was in undivided India. Okay, and basically it reassembled on 14th August 1947, after which it got divided. Mode of selection was that the members were chosen through indirect election. Okay, so how were the members of the constituent assembly chosen? It was that there were several provinces, and in those provinces there were several provincial assemblies. Okay, there were several provincial assemblies. Okay, so the people chose the members of these provincial assemblies. They then basically elected the members of the constituent assembly. All right, so it was the case of indirect elections. By the method of indirect election, the people, the members of the constituent assembly were elected. All right, so the election happened using this method. So these assemblies were basically formed under so these provincial assemblies which elected the constituent assembly, so these assemblies were basically formed under the Government of India Act 1935. All right, Now coming on to the cabinet mission plan. So there was a cabinet mission plan that basically gave the structure of the constituent assembly. Okay, it was the cabinet mission plan which came in India, and that basically provided the plan, okay, like how the constituent assembly will be formed. All right, so the seats were basically based on the population only. Provinces were given 292 seats, princely states were given 93 seats. Okay, so afterwards, and the reservation also was there, so seats were basically divided among Muslim, Sikhs and general category. Election was on the basis of proportional representation. What is the meaning of the system of proportional representation? So what we do in today's election system, FPTP system, first past the post system, there are multiple options. We basically choose just one option. Okay, now what happens in the FPTP, oh sorry, in this proportional representation system, this is called as PR, proportional representation, STV, by means of single transferable vote. In this system there are multiple candidates. Okay, we basically mark preferences in front of these candidates, like my first preference is this, second is this, third is this, fourth is this, fifth is this, then sixth preference is this. So in this system of election, preferences are marked along with the candidates. Okay, so they are marked with preferences, and on the basis of those preferences the elections happens. Okay, so princely states. So basically the princely states, representatives of the princely states were selected through consultation. So there were several princely states, and the members of those princely states were not basically randomly chosen, but they were basically selected on the basis of appointments. Okay, they were appointed, they were selected, not basically elected. Okay, so what was the composition of the constituent assembly after the partition of the country? So the members that were representative of the area that went on to Pakistan, they went away, and the remaining total membership of the constituent assembly was 299. So these 299 members framed the constitution of India. The constitution of India was adopted on 26th November 1949. So if it was adopted on 26th November 1949, then why do we celebrate Republic Day on 26th January? Tell me.
Sir, maybe it was the implementation date.
No. Others?
Uh,
Sorry?
it was adopted on 26 November, but it came into effect in January.
No, it's not like that. Several provisions came into effect on that day only. Yeah, some came into force on 26 January, but that's what I'm asking, why? Because the day it was adopted, so on that day only it was supposed to be fully implemented. Then why we basically kept the day so on, I would say this 26 January, and why we delayed it? Okay, so that's what I'm.
Congress declared it on that. Congress declared independence on 26 January.
You are very much close to that. So Shri, you know something about this? Subhashri?
No, sir.
So the thing is, what happened during the freedom struggle movement on 31st December 1929, a session of Indian National Congress happened under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru. In that session, the Congress, Indian National Congress, during that movement, they declared 26th January 1930 to be the celebrated Republic Day or Independence Day of the country. On that day, they promised that we will soon we pledge to soon basically declare our country independent. So on that day, they promised, okay, they basically promised with the destiny that we will make this country independent. All right. So to remember that day, that this day was then celebrated as the Republic Day of this country. All right. Moving
But
ahead. Yeah.
sir,
Huh.
he promised the implementation on 26 January 1930, but it is
After that day,
said
after that day, every year a symbolic celebration used to happen. Every year a symbolic celebration. We are independent nation. Okay, a symbolic celebration always used to happen after that day. So to symbolize that thing, we declared this day to be Republic Day.
okay, sir.
Uh, any other question?
No, sir.
So 284 members signed the constitution on 24th January 1950, and it came into force on 26th January 1950. Even this thing is impartial because the preamble, this is a line from that NCERT only, and this line is partially true. Why? Just go and read the preamble. Okay, so in the preamble, in the last line, we do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves the Constitution of India. And the complete line was, on the 26th day of 1949, we do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves the Constitution of India. All right. So that was the main reason why we can clearly say that the constitution was implemented or basically adopted on that day only. Even several provisions like citizenship provision, like other many other provision came into force on that day only. But still we waited for some time. All right. What was the historical background? So several violence, chaos occurred. Okay, oh, we had some lessons from the violence, also the religious violence. There was a new concept of citizenship because the previous citizenship that was there during the time of Britishers was that the minorities were denied of their equal rights. Okay, so the religious identity not linked to citizenship right. All right, representative nature of assembly was there. Okay, now this assembly which basically made the constitution was very much representative. Still there were several efforts to ensure the broad perspective of every single person in this country is represented in the constitution. All right, so the political composition of the constitution was that the Indian National Congress dominated the assembly. It held 82% of the seats after partition. Congress was the most inclusive party during that time, that basically played the major important role in the making of the constitution of India. All right, so the role of the, you got your test, you all got your test.
Mm, no, sir.
No, sir.
It isn't there on your क्या बोलते हैं उसको, on your profile.
No, sir.
Oh, today is Friday. You will get it on Saturday. I forgot. You will get it on Saturday, tomorrow.
Yes,
Okay.
we got a notice about it. That's it.
Okay, you got a notice. And what is the date and time mentioned in that notice?
Saturday, 14th March, 1 p.m. onwards.
And time?
1 p.m. onwards.
Okay. And what is the final date for submission?
It's not given, sir.
Okay. But you need to submit it before, I think, in on Sunday only. On Sunday, yeah. So I think, I don't know exactly. You can that ask via mail only, but I think it's Sunday. So now coming on to the next thing. that is role of the members. All right. So what role did they play? They play a very larger role, because in the constituent assembly the members were represented from every section of the society. They had representativeness. Okay, so representativeness was ensured everywhere. All right. And basically deliberation was guided by the interest of the whole nation. Okay, they basically took into consideration the things that concern the entire country. So these issues, centralization versus decentralization, state centralization, power of judiciary, property rights, structure of governance, everything was discussed. The structure of government that was basically adopted was universal suffrage. Okay, so universal suffrage was basically adopted. Okay, now because one person, one vote, one value. All right. Public reasoning. So members basically justified their views through reasoned argument. They never fought there in the assembly. They basically, whenever it was asked to give their arguments, they gave their arguments in reasoned way. Okay, they put forward their arguments in a very proper way, in a systematic way, in a reasonable way. All right. It was not that they were just putting forward their arguments. Okay, no, it was very much reasoned. Okay, and the debate had a very big significance. Okay, so this is now the procedure of the constituent assembly. It was that each and every single thing was debated, discussed, and was basically talked about in a very elongated, in a very properly systematic manner. Okay, it was that every single clause by clause discussion happened in the parliament, and every single thing was debated upon. Okay, so it was not like someone brought something and was just adopted. So these were prominent personalities. Okay, diverse views were there. Okay, in the assembly, which were basically considered. All right. Drafting and discussion also happened. Okay, so this drafting and discussion was happening. Everyone was drafting the bill basically. So drafting was happening, then it was discussed upon, then it was voted upon. All right. So now the careful consideration was there. Duration was very long, 166 days. So the assembly met for 166 days. Okay, over 2 year and 11 months. So this was the total time, and these were many days. How many days the assembly met together to discuss those things. All right. So inheritance of the nationalist movement. So it was the nationalist movement that basically helped in drawing that broader consensus in the minds of the people. Okay, so the consensus got developed by this national movement only. During this national movement, we basically had that full consensus, okay, in our mind, that basically enabled us to function in a certain, to basically make our country in a certain way. Okay, so that was the consensus. This consensus we have many times discussed upon. Okay, now institutional arrangements. Moral nature, this to you know, ye to liberty, quality, fraternity, main points of, yes, now this is an important point. So we see that in our constitution there is a preamble. All right. So even before preamble, so preamble was basically made at the last of the making of constitution. What is preamble? According to N.A. Palkiwala, it is considered to be as the identity card of the constitution. Okay, what is preamble? It is the identity card of the constitution. So here what happens is the preamble is very much important in basically understanding the entire constitution. If someone will come to you and will ask you like how our preamble, like what our constitution tells about, what is the main feature of our constitution, you can just ask them to refer to the preamble, because the entire preamble is just the reflection of the entire constitution, or I would say the introduction to the constitution. All right. So so the preamble of the constitution is derived from objective resolution. So objective resolution was a resolution that was basically adopted in the parliament on 9th December 1946. by Jawaharlal Nehru. It was moved by Jawaharlal Nehru and it was passed on 13th December 1946 only. Okay. So this was the beginning of the making of the constitution. The preamble had every single thing that was to be achieved by the constitution. What were the main points of the preamble, the objective resolution? It was that India shall be independent, sovereign republic. India shall be a union of all the former British Indian territories, princely states, and other willing regions. States must be autonomous units except the power vested in the union. All the power and authority shall flow from the people. And see, this thing was then written in the preamble, we the people. Now this was basically inferred in the preamble only. So this was that every power and authority must flow from the people. Socio-economic and political justice must be delivered to the people. Equality of status and opportunity must be there. Equality before law must be there. Okay, some assurances were there that speech and expression, belief, faith and worship, association and action, and subject to law and public morality. All these things must be there. Okay, so that was written in the objective resolution. Objective resolution also talked about the protection of the minorities, backward and the tribal areas, and the depressed classes. It also talked about the maintenance of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the country, and also basically talked about the commitment to the world peace and welfare of mankind. All right. So these things were mentioned in the objective resolution, which was later on translated to the preamble of the constitution. So these were very important things that were there, all right, based upon which our constitution is formed. All right, so these were the values. Okay, so those values which stood to be very important. All right, so now coming on to the next point. So institutional arrangements. So the institutions in the country are basically made by the balance. Okay, so balance is the key to the making of all the institutions by the constitution of the country. Okay, what kind of balance? As in, judiciary is given very high power, but still the powers are curtailed by legislature, because legislature can have a check and balance on the judiciary. Now, legislature, if over exercises its power, judiciary is there. If executive over exercises its power, legislature is there. If legislature, in the legislature, mainly the things that is basically done by the executive are taken into consideration. So such thing happens. So there is a institutional balance in India, in legislature, executive and judiciary, let's say, so as to prevent any concentration or misuse of power. So the power is not concentrated in just single organ and is not basically misused. All right. So even there is division of power, that is federalism. Okay, now the question that comes is, now some people alleges this thing, that the constitution is just a bag of borrowing. There are multiple allegations that the constitution is just a bag of borrowing, and we have just borrowed the principles that is there in our constitution from all the other constitutions. See, the first and very important thing here is, borrowing is not a easy task that people just refer to is it as just a borrowing thing. Okay, for what we did, what our constitutional framers did, they, before exactly borrowing anything, any value from other constitution, they first carefully examined it. They first basically took into consideration Indian circumstances and needs, and then only they adopted it in the Indian constitution. It was not like they just took it from there and just mentioned it in the Indian constitution. No, they first carefully examined it. They first carefully made alterations in it, and then only they basically added it in the constitution of India. All right, getting the point? So here the thing is they carefully examined it. They modified those things according to Indian requirement and need, and then only they basically added it to the Indian constitution. All right. This was only there. Now moving ahead to the philosophy of the constitution. All right. You all please do one thing. Just read this chapter, okay, by yourself. Philosophy is just about the values and the ideals, okay. I think for now we will be moving on to the constitutional design, okay. We will be moving on to this chapter, that is constitutional design, but I do the reading of this. So what time do you want to read this chapter? Like how many days you require to complete reading of this unit? Tell me. You can message also. Yeah.
So, uh, by Monday, like in the weekend, we can complete it.
Others?
Sir, 2 to 3 days.
That means Monday. By Monday you can read it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Subhashri? Sorry, couldn't hear you. You're not audible. Okay, no problem. So just read it by Monday. Okay. So by Monday, I'm expecting that you will be able to like read the PPTs until 18, skipping 19. Also read this because in other chapters we have already done judiciary. Nothing extra is here. Okay, we have already done that, like by the three judges case, the concurrence wala thing, because some repeated chapters were there in the NCRTs. So every other thing is covered. Okay, I already, if you remember, I told you that the president is supposed to appoint the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court, but the question was on the word concurrence. Okay, the consultation. Judiciary wanted it to be considered as concurrence, but the parliament or the executive wanted it to be held as consultation only. But ultimately, it was held that the consultation means concurrence only. That the judges of Supreme Court and High Court will be appointed by whom? By the president, and the consultation of Chief Justice of India will be binding on president, but not just CJI, but also four more other judges of Supreme Court. All right, so that is called as collegium system. So the collegium's advice is mandatory. All right, so all those things I already have told you. All right, so just have a read of this also. So 2019 I am starting now. Okay, so 19th we will be reading. So afterwards read 20 also, 20 PPT also PDF, and after that in the next class we will be starting with 21. So which one is 21? Let me see. Sometime what happens is na, some repeated chapters are there. Okay, in the NCRTs. So that chapter was same in class 6 also, and same in class 9, 10th also. Okay, so no need to repeatedly do those chapters. Okay, I think we will be requiring 2018. Okay, no, it's just give me a second. Yeah, so I think we will be requiring 3-4 hour more to complete this polity series. Okay, 3-4 more hours are required. What 4 maximum hours are required. So in the meantime, because you still have time, if you go through the indexes of the NCRTs and finds any chapter that is like you find, okay, that is either difficult or you want me to cover that chapter, okay, so you can just in the meantime tell me, okay, by even you can mail that also to the admin. Okay, it's not at all required that you will just tell me in the class only, you can just mail it to the admin also, and I will basically cover that chapter also if I find it relevant for UPSC. All right, so rest whatever chapter I found relevant for UPSC preparation and for helping you in your mains answers or basically in prelims, so I have already basically covered all those chapter in these mini PPTs only. Okay, so some PPTs, for example, understanding media advertisement and even philosophy and even judiciary, because already done, so I have skipped that, okay, but have provided you the PPTs. Okay, so now coming on to this chapter, that is democratic constitution in South Africa. Okay, see, I will just explain you the story behind this. Okay, I will just explain you that. Teaching board, I need a teaching board, just give me a second. It's not working here, it's not working. ओ यार टीचिंग बोर्ड आपको बोला था मैंने सभी को कि टीचिंग बोर्ड डाल देना, डालते नहीं हो टीचिंग बोर्ड। हाँ, उसको मैं कहा था कि सूरज को बोलना कि टीचिंग बोर्ड जो है, हाँ वो मैंने कर लिया, अब कर लिया अपलोड यार, ये वन नोट खोल दो, लगा दो उसमें। हाँ ठीक है, सी what happened in, so first we will be understanding about the case of South Africa. Okay, after understanding the case of South Africa, we will be moving on to case of India. All right, so after South Africa we will move on to India. Now let us understand what happened in South Africa. In South Africa, the way the Britishers ruled over India, so Europeans were there ruling over South Africa also. Okay, and there was also a similar struggle for independence in South Africa. All right, now what we usually do not refer that struggle to be the struggle for independence, but we refer it to be a struggle for against apartheid. Okay, why? There was a system of apartheid in South Africa. Okay, there was a system of apartheid in South Africa. Now, according to this system of apartheid, what the white government, what they did, okay, what the white government, the minority government, what they did, they divided the people in South Africa into three. One was the whites, which were minority in number. The other were the blacks, which were the majority in the country, and rest of them were basically called as colored, okay, whom we refer to as brown people. All right, so white, black, colored, these three type of people were there. All right, now what happened, they adopted a policy, they adopted a policy of segregation in South Africa. They adopted a policy of segregation. What was the meaning of the policy of segregation? By the policy of segregation, the people in South Africa, the board is not visible to you. You people don't even tell. When board is not visible, I'm teaching on the board and that's not visible to you. You don't even respond. I don't know whether you people are just listening to me or not, or just sleeping. Board was not visible, still you didn't ask me to show the board on screen. Don't do this. Just whenever you face any
Sir,
such problem.
actually the board was visible behind you, sir. On the other screen, it is not visible.
why, why you are seeing the screen behind me when I can share that? Why you are doing that? The board was visible behind you. Arey, why to make it visible behind me? Just ask me to share that screen also. Now coming on to this point. So what the what they did was, they basically in Africa, in South Africa, they started a policy of segregation. And on the basis of the policy of segregation, the white people segregated literally everything, everything, from the basic commodity like transportation, public transportation, to a larger requirement, that is for, let's say, I would say the hospital, school, roadway, transportation, okay, even the places to live, every single thing. What it happened, it was segregated. Okay, so, and on the basis of this segregation, the blacks were given the low quality things, and the rest of those things were reserved for the white community. Same sort of discrimination was there with the colored people also. Okay, so this was basically the policy of segregation. Against this policy of segregation and the racial discrimination system, which is called as apartheid system, so against this system, what they did was, they basically started a organization called as African National Congress. And this African National Congress became responsible for basically conducting all the movements related to the national freedom struggle of Africa. And this body, later on, South Africa gained independence under the leadership majorly of Nelson Mandela, and they declared themselves to be a democratic republic in 92, formed their constitution in 94, and that constitution was called as a multiracial constitution. The government that they formed after their independence was called as multiracial government. So in the next class, we will be understanding the meaning of multiracial government. All right, so let's do it in the next class. Okay,
Okay, sir.
yeah, all right,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, welcome. Did
Thank
I
you,
scolded
sir.
you? Did I scold you all?
No, sir.
I never do that, okay? So don't think I I never scold my students. I do, but I don't allow them to say that I scolded them. Chalo, bye bye. Bye.